Maddy Carmichael smiled, a perfect, practiced curve of the lips. Neighbors saw it often, at the local market during her morning jogs. She bought organic vegetables, she recycled religiously. Her lawn was an emerald carpet, manicured, controlled. Just like her smile, just like the tidy, unassuming house she returned to each evening. A little beige box. Nothing to see here. Move along. Inside, the air was different. Still. Cold, even in summer. Maddy preferred it that way. Minimalist furniture, stark white walls, a place for everything. Everything in its place, no clutter, no chaos. Chaos was for other people, for the lives she sometimes observed, from a distance, before she chose to step closer. Much closer. Her own life was a fortress of order, a carefully constructed stage. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, polite emails, clean designs, deadlines met, satisfied clients. No one ever questioned her solitary nature. Creative types were often like that, weren't they? Lost in their own worlds? Maddy was certainly lost in hers, a world far richer, far darker, than any pixelated landscape she crafted for pay. The real art happened after dark. Her evenings were quiet, a simple meal, perhaps a book. She favored biographies of unremarkable people or true crime read with a detached, almost academic interest. She studied methods, mistakes, the little tells, not for protection, oh no, for education. Her dark hair, usually tied back, would be let down. Her eyes, usually bright with forced pleasantries, would grow still, reflective, waiting for the moon. It started small, years ago, a dare almost, to herself. Could she? The house was empty, she knew that, watched it for weeks. A vacationing couple, complacent, trusting. Their spare key was exactly where they always left it. Under the chipped gnome by the wilting azaleas. Predictable. So terribly predictable. Maddy felt a fizz of something. Not quite excitement, more like potential. The key felt cold in her palm. A small, metal promise. It slid into the lock. A tiny click. So insignificant. Yet the sound echoed, loud in her own ears. The door opened onto darkness, onto someone else's life, someone else's space. She stepped inside. Her heart beat a little faster, not from fear, from transgression. The air smelled of old newspapers, faint perfume. Lives lived without her. She didn't take anything. Not that first time. She just walked, touched things. A porcelain doll on a dresser, a half-finished book by a bedside table. She opened the fridge, looked at their chosen condiments, judged their brand of milk. It was an intimacy, unearned, stolen. Power hummed beneath her skin, a quiet, thrilling current. She was a ghost in their narrative. Leaving was harder than entering, not because she feared being caught, but because the ordinary world outside felt dull, muted. The thrill lingered, a taste on her tongue. She wanted more. The key was wiped clean, returned to its silly gnome. Nothing was disturbed, nothing physical. But a line had been crossed. A door within Maddy herself had been unlocked. And what lay beyond was ravenous. Now, years later, the process was a ritual. Honed. Perfected. It began with selection. Weeks, sometimes months, of observation. She learned rhythms, habits, weaknesses. She wasn't impulsive. Impulse was messy, amateurish. Maddy was a connoisseur of vulnerability. She saw the cracks in people's routines, the unlocked windows of their souls, the overgrown hedges perfect for shadows. Tonight, it was the Henderson house. Two-story colonial. A barking terrier that went quiet with the right kind of treat. Mr. Henderson worked late on Tuesdays. Mrs. Henderson took sleeping pills. Their son was away at college. Maddy knew their lives better than they did. She wore dark, soft clothing. No labels. Her tools were minimal, efficient, carried in a slim bag that looked like any other. The air was thick tonight. Humid, threatening rain. Good. It muffled sounds, kept people indoors. She moved like smoke, a whisper along the fence line. The dog, as predicted, was silenced with a peace offering. A small satisfied yelp, then quiet chewing. The back door lock was standard, child's play. A few clicks, then silence again. She listened. The house breathed. Unaware. Inside, the familiar scent of other people, their choices, their lives. She didn't turn on lights. Her eyes adjusted quickly. She knew the layout, memorized from discarded realtor floor plans found online. She moved with purpose, towards the sound of shallow, medicated breathing. The thrill was different now, sharper, not just about entry, it was about presence, about the precipice. What drove Maddy? Not money, she had enough, not material possessions, they bored her. It was the control, the absolute intoxicating control. In those silent houses, in those stolen moments, she was a god. deciding, orchestrating. She saw people as constructs, fragile things, wrapped in their routines, their illusions of safety. Maddy liked to peel those layers away, gently at first, then not so gently. There was a void inside her, a hollow space carved out long ago by things she never spoke of, things she barely let herself remember in the daylight. But in the dark, in the homes of strangers, the void felt almost full. The fear of others was a balm, their helplessness a strange comfort. It was a hunger, deep, primal. Each intrusion, each life held in her hands, a temporary satiation. Never enough. She didn't hate them, not usually. Hate was too personal, too messy. They were simply opportunities. To feel, to be, something powerful, something real. In her ordinary life she felt like a phantom, a collection of polite gestures, but here, in the stillness of a sleeping house, with a life fluttering nearby, she was intensely, terrifyingly alive. The ultimate artist, and fear was her medium. Sometimes she wondered about the why, a fleeting thought, quickly dismissed. Analysis was a trap. It diluted the purity of the act, the need. It was simpler than psychology. It was hunger. It was power. It was the only time the screaming in her own head went quiet, replaced by the soft, predictable terror of another, a much more manageable sound. A symphony she conducted. Eleanor Henderson drifted in a shallow, drug-induced sleep. The pills never gave her true rest, just a fuzzy blanket over her anxieties. Tonight the blanket felt thin. A sound pricked at the edges of her consciousness, small, unidentifiable. Probably the old house settling, or the cat from next door, bold again. She sighed, rolled over, tried to sink back into the fuzz. But the sound came again, a soft thud, downstairs. Her heart gave a little jump. Not the cat, this was different, more deliberate. Her husband Mark wasn't due back for hours. He always called if he was early. Her hand fumbled for her phone on the nightstand, screen too bright. She squinted. No messages, no missed calls, just the unnerving silence from downstairs, a silence that now felt charged. She held her breath, listening. Every creak of the floorboards was magnified, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Was that a floorboard on the stairs? Her breath hitched. No, imagination, stress. Mark would laugh at her, call her paranoid, he always did. But the feeling persisted, a cold dread seeping into the room, making the air thick, hard to breathe. Then, a shadow, under the door, blocking the faint light from the hallway nightlight. It wasn't moving, just there, solid, ominous. Eleanor's blood ran cold. This was not her imagination, this was real. Someone was in the house, someone was just outside her bedroom door. Her throat tightened, a scream tried to form, but only a strangled gasp escaped, frozen, trapped. The shadow remained, unmoving, like a silent sentinel of dread. Eleanor's mind raced, frantic, searching for an escape, a reason. The window? Too high? The phone? Who to call? What to say? I think there's a shadow under my door? They'd dismiss her until it was too late. The silence stretched, taut, unbearable. Each beat of her own heart was a drum against her ribs, loud enough, she feared, for the shadow to hear. She thought of Mark, his easy laugh, his strong arms. He felt a million miles away, useless. She was alone, completely, utterly, with whatever waited on the other side of that thin piece of wood. Was it a burglar, looking for jewelry, cash? She'd give them anything, just go, please, just go. But the stillness suggested something else, something more patient, more sinister. Then a whisper of sound, a soft scraping like fingernails on wood near the doorknob. Eleanor pressed herself back against the headboard, her eyes wide, straining in the dim light. The doorknob began to turn, slowly, excruciatingly slowly. A tiny metallic groan. Each fraction of a turn was an eternity of terror. She wanted to scream, to fight, but her limbs were lead, her voice a forgotten memory. The door creaked open, a sliver of darker darkness. Then a shape, tall, slender, indistinct. It paused in the doorway, observing. She could feel its gaze, cold, penetrating like an insect pinned to a board. This wasn't about valuables. This was about her. The air crackled with a silent, predatory energy. The symphony of her fear was reaching its crescendo, and the conductor had just entered the room. Maddy watched the woman, Eleanor, frozen against the pillows, a portrait of pure terror. It was beautiful, in its own way. The wide, unblinking eyes, the slight tremor in her hands, the shallow, rapid breaths. Maddy savored it, this moment, the culmination of weeks of planning, the absolute surrender of another human being. It was a potent drug, better than any other. She took a step into the room, slow, deliberate. No sudden movements. She wasn't here to rush. The fear was the point, the anticipation. She saw herself reflected in Eleanor's terrified eyes, not as Maddy Carmichael, the quiet graphic designer, but as this hunter, this bringer of endings. It was the truest version of herself, the one she kept hidden from the sunlit world. "Please," Eleanor whispered, a tiny broken sound. Maddy almost smiled, but her face remained impassive, a mask of calm control. Words were unnecessary, they diluted the experience. This was a primal exchange, predator and prey, the oldest dance. She moved closer to the bed, each step measured, each rustle of her clothing a note in the terrifying silence. Eleanor flinched as Maddy reached out, not to touch her, not yet. Maddy simply picked up a small framed photograph from the nightstand. Eleanor and Mark smiling on a beach somewhere, happy, oblivious. Maddy studied it for a moment, then gently, she placed it face down. A small symbolic act erasing their little world. It was time. The collection needed a new piece. Her gaze returned to Eleanor, cold, decisive. The act itself was swift, precise. Maddy was an artist of efficiency, no wasted motion, no unnecessary cruelty beyond the exquisite terror she had already crafted. There was a strange peace in it. The thrumming in her own blood subsided, the hunger abated. For now. She worked quickly in the aftermath, the other part of the ritual, the cleansing, just as important as the taking. She had brought her own supplies, wipes, solutions, gloves already on. Every surface she might have touched, every potential trace erased meticulously. She was a ghost. She had always been a ghost, leaving nothing behind but a void, a question mark. A family shattered. But no clues, never any clues. This house would be just another enigma for the police, another unsolved tragedy. She moved through the house, backwards, undoing her path. The doorknobs, the light switches she hadn't used but might have brushed, the floor where she stood. It was a dance of negation, a careful unmaking. She felt a quiet satisfaction in this too, the neatness of it, the perfection of her craft. The world was chaotic, unpredictable, but here, in this small, contained act of destruction and erasure, she found order. Finally, the back door wiped clean, locked from the outside using a tool that left no marks. The spare key to Mr. Henderson's shed, where she'd found a way to manipulate the old lock, was returned. She walked away, into the pre-dawn gloom. The rain had started, washing the world clean, just as she had washed her presence from the house. Another night, another successful performance. The silence she left behind was profound. The sun rose, painting the sky in hues of pink and gray. Maddy Carmichael was already awake, showered, dressed, not in dark soft clothing, but in crisp, clean scrubs. She sipped her coffee, black, no sugar. Her apartment was still, orderly, no trace of the night's activities, no hint of the darkness she carried, or perhaps, the darkness she expertly wielded. She drove to the hospital, St. Michael's General, parked in her designated spot. Dr. Madeline Carmichael, head of trauma surgery, respected, admired, known for her steady hands, her calm demeanor in the face of chaos, the lives she saved, daily. She walked through the automatic doors, the familiar smell of antiseptic and desperation greeted her, a different kind of battlefield. Later that morning, a call would come in, a new patient, critical condition, a woman found in her home, unresponsive. Maddy would be paged, she would scrub in, her face a mask of professional concern. Her skilled hands would work to repair, to mend, to fight against the very thing she had unleashed only hours before. No one would ever suspect, the hands that took a life, were the same hands that fought to save others. She looked at her reflection in the polished steel of a medical cart. Dr. Carmichael stared back, calm, capable. Her secret was safe, buried deep, the perfect, horrifying balance. One life to feed the darkness, many more to justify the light, or was it the other way around? Sometimes even Maddy wasn't entirely sure. But the system worked, for her, and that was all that mattered. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you so much. Please like and subscribe if you have not already.